What is up, everyone? My name is Alex, and today we're going to be comparing the image quality between the iPhone, the ZVE-10 first generation, and the FX30. Let's get right into it. First, let's talk about the iPhone. Today we're going to be using the iPhone 15 Pro Max. It cost about $1,200 when I bought it. It's going to give you 10-bit color with 12 stops of dynamic range. Next, we have the ZVE-10, which will run you down about $700. It has 8-bit color and 13 stops of dynamic range. Then finally, we have the FX30, which costs about $1,800, has 10-bit color and 14 stops of dynamic range. For today's test, we're going to be shooting an S-Log 3 on both the FX30 and the ZVE-10. We'll also be using the same lens, my Sigma 16mm f1.4, on both of those cameras. For my iPhone, we're going to be using the Blackmagic camera app, which will let me dial in the exact settings, so we'll be able to get a very accurate test. Alright, let's take a look. First, here is the iPhone. The dynamic range actually looks pretty good here. The sky colors are really accurate. The greens look a little bit too strong in my opinion, and the grass lacks a bit of detail. Here is the ZVE-10. The colors look more accurate and have a more neutral tone than the iPhone, but they do look a bit washed out. The dynamic range does suffer in the sky, and it still lacks a bit of detail. And here is the FX30. The dynamic range looks really good here. There is a nice contrast with a lot of detail in the shadows and the highlights, and the image looks a lot sharper. And here is a look at all three of them side by side. There are some big differences in sharpness. The FX30 looks a lot sharper than the other two. The sky color also looks the worst on the ZVE-10. And here is the iPhone. The colors are looking really good. There is a lot of good contrast. The greens are looking a little bit too pronounced, and the highlights aren't great, especially on the white flower. Here is the ZVE-10. The highlights are looking better and the image looks less harsh, but it does lack a bit of contrast, and I'm not seeing all the colors, probably because this is only an 8-bit camera. And here is the FX30. The dynamic range looks really good here. There's a lot of details in the highlights. The colors also look really good and accurate, but in my opinion, it looks a bit harsh. And here is all three of them side by side. The iPhone is looking a little bit harsh, and this you can definitely see the color difference between the ZVE-10 and the other two, as the colors are less pronounced. Here we are looking at skin tones, and on the iPhone they are looking pretty good, but I do think there is a little bit too much green, especially in the shadows, and the warmth does look a little bit patchy and uneven. Here is the ZVE-10. The warmth looks good, but it looks really washed out and lacks a lot of clarity. The dynamic range is also really suffering, especially in the background in the sky. And here is the FX30. The colors of the skin are looking really accurate and have good saturation. There's also a lot of smoothness in the highlights, but it does look a bit flat and lacks a bit of clarity. And here is all three of them side by side. There's not a huge amount of difference between them, but the ZVE-10 is definitely the worst of the three, and the FX30 looks a lot more smooth than the iPhone. Here is the iPhone in low light. I think this footage speaks for itself. iPhones are not great in low light. There is a lot of grain, and there's a lot of tinting going on, especially in the shadows, looking pretty green. Here is the ZVE-10. The colors look a lot more accurate than the iPhone, but the highlights are slightly tinted pink. It is still pretty grainy, but the biggest thing I notice is that it lacks a lot of sharpness. And here is the FX30. The colors are looking really accurate, especially in the highlights. There is still a little bit of grain, but the sharpness is super good. The detail in the shadows is also great. And here is all three of them side by side. I think the difference is pretty clear. The iPhone is easily the worst of the three. The FX30 is the winner here, as its sharpness and color accuracy in low light is amazing. Now, if you're looking into purchasing any three of these cameras, here is what I would recommend. I would recommend the iPhone if you want something ultra portable that still has good quality video. As you just saw, the iPhone can shoot some pretty good video, especially nowadays with log shooting and ProRes and stuff like that. It's also good for stuff like social media content or really quick run and gun shooting. I would recommend the ZVE-10 if you're looking for something a little bit more advanced than the iPhone that is still budget friendly. You can do a little bit more stuff like change more settings, change lenses, things like that. It's really good for YouTube content like this or for vlogging. It's also the best out of the three that we looked at today for still photography, if that's what you're into. The only thing I would say against this camera is you can only shoot at 4K 30. You can't go above that. So if you're looking to film stuff like sports or anything where you need to slow down your footage in post, then I would recommend getting like the FX30 or the ZVE-10 second generation, which just came out pretty recently, that shoots at 4K 60 and gives you a little bit more flexibility there. That one's also 10-bit, but overall, this is a really good camera. I would recommend the FX30 to anyone who is doing more professional work, stuff like documentaries, big short films, stuff like that. It is a cinema camera, so you're gonna be able to get a lot of really cool features like 4K at 120 frames per second, stuff like that. It's gonna give you really good video quality, like as you just saw. So I hope this video was interesting to you, and if you are deciding which camera to buy between these three, I really hope that this helped. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell if you want to get notified every time that I upload a new video. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out and happy filmmaking.